God, I love that intro music. I love that intro music. It hits so good and so hard. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Opinionated Idiot YouTube channel. I am the Opinionated Idiot, and it is January 17th, 2023. And I welcome all of you over here on the channel. How is everybody doing? How's everybody's week starting out so far? I hope everything is going well. I hope everything's going very well. As we've kind of gone over the last couple of weeks here, we've discussed a lot that's going on in the Bryan Kohberger murder trial of the Ohio Four. And, there's not really a lot of new activity yet. And we probably won't now see anything until June unless there's more details that come out, that the press can get into and kind of dig up at this point, because we know the gag order is on both sides. Defendants are not allowed to talk. The prosecution's not allowed to talk. But what's probably going on at this point is that, you have the prosecution that's building probably an exorbitant, a crazy case to why Kohberger is guilty. And then you have the defense, Kohberger's team, that is now examining all of this evidence and looking at all of it and seeing what kind of defense that they can come up with. And maybe we hear a little bit more about that. Maybe the press can dig into things, because certainly we're seeing things now. They're finding people that knew Kohberger, went to school with him. I just dropped a video the other day on the channel, if you haven't seen it, about a Tinder date that Kohberger went out with, and she explained a lot of the details of that date, how he was in that date. And we're starting to learn a little bit more about him. So, I know that the prosecution and the law enforcement probably still have an ongoing investigation in this matter. I'm sure that they're still searching over lots of clues, canvassing that area that Kohberger hit, all that cell tower. His phone was pinging all that area around, and that long road that he traveled to get to Moscow. I'm going to get this right. Moscow. My accent, my Boston accent kicks in. Moscow. And I got corrected the other night on one of my videos, but I'm trying to do my best to correct myself on that. But that long route that he took in and out of Moscow. I just did it again. Damn. I promise I will get this at some point. But the biggest thing now that's come up is, because now we have time to think and time to speculate and look, is there a possibility, did Kohberger, could he have killed 4 people in roughly 16 minutes? I know some people are saying 14 minutes. All the data and the evidence that I look at, all the statements that have been made, I put it roughly the timeline around 16 minutes. So Kohberger had 16 minutes to park, to walk into that house, to conceal himself, to go up onto that 3rd floor, do what he did, come back down, and leave out that sliding glass door. And then you start to think to yourself, how long is 16 minutes? It's relatively a long time if you really think about it. I know I timed myself the other day. I got up, I got some food, I had a few things to do in the kitchen, and I came back, I watched a short video, and that 16 minutes after a while was kind of like sitting there. I'm like, that's a long time. It feels like a long time. But what I want to do this evening is I have a few videos that I want to play through, and relative to this subject, could he have done this in 16 minutes? So I know there was a video that News Nation posted the other day with Chris Cuomo, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll play through that video, and we can discuss what they're talking about and going through in this video.
Okay,
so let's check
DNA
this
on the
out.
sheath. I don't know what kind it is, but what if it's his sheath, but somebody else used it? Now, I don't see any reason to believe that there is any connection to the shootout at Washington State University that went on.
Yes, and I totally forgot about that. And the funny thing is, I have my note right here. The thing that is coming up in a theory now too is could this person out at WSU that was involved in a shooting on December 15th, and ironically enough, on the day that Kohberger left with his dad to drive back to Pennsylvania, was there any involvement? And that's kind of the theory here. Could this person have been a co-defendant? Because what we're looking at is that short window of time. You know, this video says 10 minutes. I put it at about 16, between 14 and 16 minutes that these murders were committed. Was that enough time for a single person to go in and kill 4 people? So now the theory has come up, was there a co-defendant that we don't know about? And the thing that's really interesting about this too is, remember, when Kohberger was traveling back with his dad, and I can't remember if it was the first or the second, could have been the first video. I can't remember. His dad said something about the WSU shooting. You know, oh, he heard about the SWAT team, and then remember when Kohberger was arrested, and I don't know if he did this just to throw off law enforcement, but he asked in a statement, he said, was anybody else arrested? So I don't know if he's just doing that to throw off law enforcement or just throw something out, or was that like a Freudian slip? But that is now the question in this too. Is there a co-defendant? So let's look through this. Let's watch through this and see what the conversation is here.
On with somebody who wanted to kill their roommates, and this theory that's all over TikTok about how, hey, that guy may have done it. He was friends with Bryan. I don't know that any of that is true. I have no reason to believe it's true. But the idea...
And that's something that we don't know yet. That has not been confirmed if they were friends.
Bryan Kohberger may have been there or in the car, but it wasn't him.
Okay, so, you know, I always start out when I'm going to speculate on a case that I'm not actively investigating, right? That I'm not privy to all of the details. I always want to say that we don't know what we don't know. So,
right. And again, this is, you know, what I'm doing here as well is just pure speculation for the site of, conversation, to open up some new theories and see, you know, is there a possibility in this? We're just, you know, we're looking at what we have as far as the evidence in the affidavit. That's really all we have at this point. We're not going to know any of the really intricate details until trial, if there is a trial. You know, and again, I said this on my stream just the other night. You know, the evidence might come out and it's really bad against Kohberger, and he decides to just take a plea and not even go to trial. So, you know, that just remains to be seen.
So it's entirely possible that information could come forward that would make some of those pieces fall into place. However, with what we know publicly right now, I would be completely disinclined to believe there was anybody else at that scene, or that Bryan was operating in tandem with anybody else. When we tend to see you know, high profile, like high crime, intense, violent actions like this committed by 2 people, what we would call a folie à deux. You know, we're talking about like the Hillside Strangler, Carla Homolka and her husband. We tend to see the signs of those in all sorts of different aspects of their lives. So we're going to see them paired up with that person regularly. We're going to see either, you know, there's somebody in their life who they exert a lot of dominance over, or who exerts a lot of dominance over them. And at least as of right now, we're not seeing any of that with any.
Yeah, we haven't seen any reports that Kohberger has been seen with this person that was involved in the WSU shooting. So we as far as right now, you know, we don't know any connection.
Been shown about Kohberger.
But we don't know what we don't know. Mark Aragos, how does the idea of accomplice there but not him and timeline play into the mix of a potential defense?
Well, look, you had on the public defender, who I think a lot of skilled and veteran defense lawyers do the same thing. Before you have the client tell you any facts whatsoever, you want to know what the prosecution has. And he wants to know what was in that probable cause affidavit. And why is that? Well, there are ethical concerns. There are concerns about whether or not you ever will put your client on the stand. I won't belabor that. But I will tell you this. One of the interesting kind of facts about this, and I think one of the reasons that people have been speculating, and I would echo, we don't know what we don't
Right.
know. However,
We don't
on
know.
the body cam, there is a discussion
Yep.
about the SWAT shootout.
Yep.
And when I'm talking about the body
We just
cam,
talked about
once
that.
again, I believe it was in Indiana. It was one of the officers who
was.
pulled him over with his father. They talked about that. They mentioned that. That's interesting to me as a defense lawyer. One of the things I'd want to know, the first things that I would have the
why.
investigator follow up on is, did they know
Yep.
each other? And can I show that they knew each other? Were they together on that evening? Were they, did they have previous evenings when they were together? And you would explore all of that. And I certainly would.
Honest Star says someone must have helped him. He believes, or she believes, that someone must have helped Kohberger in doing this. I want to, first of all, I actually, how rude of me, I totally forgot about this. I wanted to thank everybody lately that has subscribed to the channel. I'm at about 87 subscribers right now, so I'm 87 people closer to getting this channel monetized. But I want to thank everybody lately who has subscribed to the channel. I've picked up quite a few over the last couple of days, and I really do appreciate that, and I appreciate all the activity on the videos and watching the live streams. I really do. This has really been a lot of fun. Not fun in the sense of, the tragedy that we're covering, but just having the activity and really engaging with all of you and engaging in this content and just getting, your perspectives behind everything that's been, what we know so far. So I really do appreciate that. And again, if you're new over here on the channel, make sure to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, because it helps get this content out into the algorithm. And, like I said, my focus here is a straight and honest approach. I try to, go with the facts, what's being said, and follow the conversation that's out there. I don't like to speculate or say, John Doe is the one that did it and this and that. I go with the facts here on the channel, and we can take those facts and speculate off of them and just give us, our opinion and ideas as well. So really do appreciate that. Let's go back to this video.
Would not want to be wedded to what
If you
the
feel that you
client
need to
tells me. I've had
comment, please
cases
do.
where a
Comment in the chat.
client
Makes
has
these
told me
live
1,
streams
2,
a
or
lot
3
better.
stories that were all false when it was about the facts. And the reason was, ultimately, the truth would have set them free, but it was so mortifying, it was so embarrassing that they didn't want to go there. And so the last person you want as your historian, so to speak, before you know what the prosecution has, is your client. That's just the way I approach it. And I think I'm not alone amongst the criminal defense bar in that regard.
Sarah, the idea of 10 minutes, timeline, not enough. Couldn't do it.
Not really 10 minutes, and I said this along in my really researching and looking at this case. And the other night I did a huge, extensive detail walkthrough of the crime scene, the full timeline. It is on Reddit. You can go back and watch that. It's a virtual walkthrough of 1122 King Road. And you can see my whole extreme walkthrough of that, of what happened leading up to that. The night of the murders at King Road. And, my estimation is going to be between 14 to 16 minutes. I'm really a lot stronger on the 16-minute side. It's about how long the suspect had to get in and out of the King Road residence. So
alone. How long is 10 minutes?
It's a very, very long time. And I would disagree with that as well. I think it's entirely possible, particularly, if we look at the different scenarios without going into too much, graphic detail. If he came up that, onto the second floor landing and encountered Ethan as he was coming out into the hallway, where, Ethan's remains were found, it would have been very quick there in the hallway, a very, quick follow up in the bedroom.
That's what I mean, that, with the violent nature of what went on, it's so hard. And this is why I think the law enforcement and prosecution are playing poker hand right now. What we got in that affidavit, we got, yes, his DNA was found on that sheath. but I think they're holding their cards right now. And they are 100% sure that this is Kohberger, they have to have more DNA. They have to have collected more DNA at that scene. With the violent nature, and I don't want to get too, like I said, I don't want to get too graphic in this, but with the violent nature of that and the adrenaline rush and all of that activity that's going on, maybe some pushing, shoving, whatever, tackling, I just find it very hard to believe that there was no blood spatter or no evidence or no cuts or his blood got anywhere. I don't see it. The way that this scene has been described by some of the law enforcement, that was some of the most difficult crime scene that they ever had to walk into. So I find it hard to believe that there's not more evidence. And I'm telling you, when they get inside that car and they start swabbing and, I've read stories, reports now, they're going to take apart, entirely that car, the dashboard, all the little crevices, and get in and swab all for DNA. If there is any ounce of DNA for any of those 4 victims in that car, it's an open and cut case. I mean, if there's blood splatter, anything of those victims in that car, forget it. It's over. So Honest is saying, I don't see how one person can take on 4 with no gun, and the other 2 roommates barely heard anything. Yeah, this is true, but Ethan was a big guy, and Ethan was a tall guy. And I'm sure that there was, where we're finding where his body was out in that hallway. I'm sure that there was some kind of struggle. Had to have been. Yes, we know this. This has all been reported. We know. We know that the roommates went back to sleep for 8 hours. So let's continue.
Xana, and then up to the second floor, where it at least appears, again, based on what we know now, where his primary target was, or up onto the third floor rather. And so I think it could all happen very quickly. Which would also, support the idea that this may have been his first really significant violent act against other people, as opposed to when we see serial predation, we tend to see this kind of knife violence. We would tend to see want to follow up, spend time with the body, and we obviously did not see that here.
Hey, thank you for watching.
All right, so that's one video I wanted to go through, and then there was another that came up on the Megyn Kelly show the other day, and I found this one to be very interesting as well. You had a former lawyer, I'm not sure that she's still practicing, but Marcia Clark, that she is very famous, obviously was part of the prosecution team in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. She was on the show the other day, and another gentleman as well, Mark Gageros, was on there as well, and they kind of give their perspective on the co-defendant theory. So let's play through that. And then I have another one that I want to play through as well, too. Let's check this one out.
It seems like a typo to me, not by the Daily Wire, but by Bryan Kohberger's lawyer. But I'll read you what they're reporting. The headline is, suspected Idaho killer requests documents related to, quote, co-defendant, who has never been mentioned by police. I'll read to you from the report. This week, Kohberger...
And remember, when Kohberger was arrested, he asked if anybody else was arrested. And again, this could be just something, him throwing off law enforcement at that point. We're not sure. But this is a very interesting theory now. And, look, we're going to have months to speculate and go over all of these theories. That's the crazy thing about this.
Kohberger's public defender, Ann Taylor, filed motions requesting, quote, any written or recorded statements by a co-defendant and the substance of any relevant oral statement made by a co-defendant, whether before or after arrest in response to interrogation by any person known by the co-defendant to be a peace officer or agent of the prosecuting attorney, etc. Okay. And then Yeah, and as
Marcia,
you know,
I-
that this
I mean-
particular defendant previously asked members of law enforcement if they had arrested anyone else in connection with this crime. I gotta say, it sounds like a typo, like a
Well-
cut and paste by a busy public defender. But what do you think, Mark?
Well, I was just going to say, normally I would say in a vacuum, I would agree with you. I'd say it's a boilerplate discovery request, cut and paste, as you say, that went out there. However, put this next to, and this is why I'm fascinated, I want to see what Marcia has to say about this. There was a sealing order on a search warrant, and the sealing order had language that I have frankly never seen, or I can't remember ever having seen, which was part of it was they did not want law enforcement to be exposed to threats or intimidation and expose the investigation. Now, exposing the investigation, I've come across a zillion times. That's standard operating procedure. Threats to law enforcement leads me to believe that there is something that apparently they missed, or a thread that they missed, or didn't, or got out in front of their skis. Remember, the officers had said, we're 100% certain this is the guy, nobody else. I think there is a suspicion that there is somebody else or someone else.
Wow. Interesting. Very, very interesting. And yeah, this has now been, and who knows, maybe this is just the media, bringing more stuff up so they can create a story. But it's very interesting to take on this now.
In the mix.
Maybe he had a driver. Maybe he had someone that was taking him there. Maybe he was the one that was driving.
Whoa. Marcia, let me read what Mark's referring to.
And when I mean I'm referring to Kohberger.
Just to color it in for the audience. This is the search warrant for Bryan Kohberger's Washington State apartment, which has been temporarily sealed. That's been sealed. They haven't shared with us the search warrant. They've shared with us the affidavit that was in support of the arrest warrant, and it was very detailed. But for some reason, they're sealing the search warrant for the guy's apartment, which was requested on the same day as the arrest warrant, December 30th. But now we see why they're sealing it. They say, and this is going to remain sealed until March 1st, potentially earlier, but as of March 1st for now. This is what they said in asking for the sealing, prosecutors and police. Premature public disclosure of the details in this law enforcement investigation will create serious and imminent threat to effective law enforcement and could result in the premature end of this investigation, which could create a threat to public safety. What are your thoughts?
I think there are many. What Mark has said is a potential, but let me tell you about some of the background in the development of this case. This case kind of went crazy on social media, and a lot of people were in there speculating about others that may be involved, and then out and out dogpiling these people with no evidence, nothing but speculation, imagination, and just putting.
It's one thing that I have not done here on this channel is dogpile anybody. Again, I roll with the facts and maybe some of the theories that are out there, but I would never attack anybody on this channel. I would never mention anybody's name that was not confirmed, anything like that. So that's one thing that I've done here is I've never put on any false narratives, like when, Jack was getting dogpiled on, and then come to find out he was completely clear. I did not do anything like that on this channel.
Together 2 + 2 and equaling 8. And so some very innocent people got dogpiled for at least a few moments on the internet. And by moments, that could be days, I'm not sure. So it has been going kind of in its way viral. And people looking for attention, which always happens on the internet, are coming out spewing all of these theories about who might have done it and why they did it. And that is a danger to any investigation. It's a danger to law enforcement because it encourages people to come forward who really have nothing relevant to say. It discourages people from coming forward who actually have something important to say. And it, of course, might subject law enforcement themselves to all kinds of threats and horrible responses on the internet. This has become now a force in our criminal justice system. It lurks around the edges, and sometimes it even invades to the middle. So we have a very serious problem with that. And I think that sealing would be an appropriate way of tamping it down. You just don't want to let out information that could be the way you catch a liar or the way you spot the truth. Those details are the way you test what witnesses say. And if you let those details out, you run a very real risk of skewing the investigation.
Well, Mark, don't you think, I mean, the warrant in support of affidavit in support of the arrest warrant is 18 pages long. We have so many details from that. Why allow that one out into the public domain, but not this one?
Well, I don't disagree with you at all. I was speculating, and that's all we do here, I guess, but I was speculating that the defense might have requested that remain sealed. But the cynic in me thinks that because the officers in the police department had taken so much heat, as Marcia describes it, that they wanted to show, and I believe it was the chief, had indicated that once it was unsealed, they would be vindicated, so to speak. And I suppose that's one explanation.
Yeah, and you got to remember the Moscow Police Department caught a lot of shit during this investigation. They were not moving quick enough, and some of the parents had come out of the victims and started saying, I know Kaylee's dad was saying a lot of stuff, and it's unbelievable that 4 innocent kids are dead, and we still don't have a suspect, and this should pretty much be easy with all the activity that goes on in this town. No one saw anything, and they had a really rough go. They had a really rough go.
I still think there's something else going on here. I suspect that there is another source profile of DNA or something else that was found.
Very interesting.
At the scene. I just don't think, when you take a look at the timeline of this, and you know that there is a DoorDash driver there at 4 a.m., and you know that there is a spotting by DM, as they call the person in the affidavit, of somebody in the hallway. There's just, I believe that there is more here than meets the eye, and we're just not going to see it. And I think it's one of the reasons that the defense so readily said they would waive time until June on their speedy trial rights of the preliminary hearing.
Did you know your internet service provider knows literally everything you do online? How about that?
All right, I think we're going to get a commercial here. I think that's probably the end of the segment. So that's very interesting, though. Now that we're seeing more of this come out, and it's interesting to find out that the search warrant is sealed, but the affidavit was released. So, going back to the point of what they were just talking about was like, what information's in that search warrant, where they're not allowing that to go out because they feel like there could be information that could compromise the investigation in a very quick manner. And that's very interesting. And they said that that's not going to get released until March. So maybe they want, 2 more months to look into something. Maybe there was, like that gentleman was saying, Mark was saying, maybe there is another DNA profile that came up in the blood or the area around the crime scene. So it starts to kind of make you think, is there a possibility of a second person that could be involved in this crime? Very interesting stuff. So the last thing that I wanted to go through this evening was, excuse me, a video that just came up through the Law and Crime Network. And this one just came out about, it wasn't an hour ago, because I think I watched this this morning. I think it was released this morning. And it talks about some of the notable weaknesses in Kohberger's affidavit. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have not completely watched through this, so we can watch through it together and go through and see what we have here.
A criminal complaint was filed yesterday here in Latah County, charging the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to felony burglary, which involves entering the residence with the intent to commit the crime of murder.
How strong is the evidence right now against accused killer Bryan Kohberger? Criminal defense attorney and former member of Scott Peterson's legal team, Laria Retzian, comes on to discuss what Kohberger's lawyers need to do. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, we have focused a lot here on Bryan Kohberger's alleged crimes. The 28-year-old grad student who's been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and felony burglary for allegedly stabbing to death 4 University of Idaho students. This, of course, are the killings of 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, 21-year-old Madison Mogan, 20-year-old Zana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin, whose bodies were found in their off-campus rental home on November 13th. But now I want to focus on his potential defenses, because as much as was laid out in the probable cause affidavit that led to Kohberger's arrest, our next guest is going to focus on some potential holes in a future prosecution case. I'm joined right now by criminal defense attorney Laura Retzian, and one of the reasons that we wanted to bring Laura on is because when we talk about high-profile criminal defendants, well, Laura was part of the defense team for one of the most renowned criminal defendants in our true crime era, Scott Peterson. So she knows a thing or two about these types of cases that have gained or really generated an intense public interest. So, Laura.
Keep it quilted means you keep it the best.
Commercial.
3 layers of plush.
All right.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming here on
YouTube's got to
Sidebar.
get
Where
paid.
I really want to start is if you were representing Bryan Kohberger, how would you deal with all the publicity? And by that I mean is, in the same sense with Scott Peterson, if you rewind the clock 20 years ago, how do you convince the public, who arguably have already convicted him of saying, wait a second, let's take a step back, let's reframe the narrative. If you were representing Kohberger, how would you do that on the public scale?
Well, we know that there's a gag order in this case, so the attorney can't really be out there doing interviews or allowing her client to be interviewed because there's a gag order, right? So she's very limited. So she herself can't really do much. Maybe what can be done is what she does best, and that's be an attorney and defend him the best she can in a courtroom by bringing up many of the issues in the case, by filing motions. And obviously, everyone will be covering all those issues. If there's issues with the evidence, bring those up, and we'll go through all of that.
I mean, wait till this, if this goes to trial. I mean, just wait. The media around this is just going to go bananas. And I just wonder if there's going to be able to get cameras in the courtroom. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a gag order on that as well. But, from a true crime community standpoint, we hope for all those things because we want to know, we want to watch
a little bit, and also if there's family members or cousins or people in his past who can say some great things about him, and that doesn't necessarily involve the attorney, those being interviewed would be a great thing to do. Again, the best thing she can do is investigate the case as much as possible, bring about some exonerating evidence, and file all the necessary motions, and basically put up a great fight for him in the courtroom, which will be covered.
You're just joining the stream. We're watching a segment on Law and Crime Sidebar from the Law and Crime Network. Really great source of information over there. We're basically talking about previous in the stream. I talked about, basically the focus tonight is, could Kohberger have killed 4 people in 16 minutes? And basically right now we're going through a segment that's talking about the most notable weaknesses in Bryan Kohberger's affidavit. And what we have here, and I forget her name, I'm sorry, about 20 years ago, she was a defense lawyer for Scott Peterson in the Laci Peterson murder trial. So
anyway,
she's giving her perspective
How tough
here.
is it for him to get a fair and impartial jury? Now, look, we've covered a number of high-profile cases here on Law and Crime, and we've seen trials. I'm thinking the Derek Chauvin case, a case that everybody in the United States and in abroad knew about, and yet he had what I believed, I covered it, was a fair and impartial trial. You tell me, how tough is it going to be for Mr. Kohberger to get a jury of his peers who are not somehow influenced by all the evidence yet?
It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge. I don't want to say it's an impossibility, but it's pretty close to that. Anytime you have a notorious crime or an individual who has been arrested and the public opinion is truly against him at this point.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I think that's like the thing, even in the O.J. Simpson trial, from what I remember, I think they searched for weeks to get people that never even heard of him. I remember hearing about the pre-screen questions for potential jurors of like, jury questions, information, of questions to be answered like this thick, a packet. And that took a long time to find jurors for that case.
Got people uh, all over the social media, in fact, trying to psychoanalyze him. I mean, it's not only that they've convicted him, they're even psychoanalyzing why, how, what was he thinking, and just literally like,
Well, but that's what we do as human beings when a case, and again, we're hearing this from a defense attorney, but that's what we do as people. We're interested. We want to know. We want to know what happened. 4 innocent lives were taken, and now you have suspect number 1. Kohberger is the alleged suspect in this murder investigation, and you want to know. You want to know about him. Is there a possibility? So I just don't understand the
going through his entire background, finding every little thing that they can
what
find,
we
and
do.
making a big deal out of every little thing.
It is a big
trying
deal.
to connect it all to basically
Of course.
support their belief that he did this. So Jesse, that this is going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be tough. Winning the public opinion battle is not the easy part here. I think, again, as counsel, the defense counsel has to focus on the case and try and convince a jury and pick a good jury. That's the first part. Picking the right jury, a jury that's not really influenced by any of this, or a jury that can keep that separate from the deliberations and truly focus on the case and make the best case possible in the case. What else can an attorney do, really?
Okay, let's focus on the legal case, the probable cause affidavit. I want to go through it with you. Now, we should make everything very clear that not only is Mr. Kohberger innocent until proven guilty,
right.
but the evidence that we currently have is going to be, I would imagine, a lot.
And that's something that I've always said here too, is that any type of trial, anybody that is accused of a crime always gets their fair due process. As much as you think that they are guilty or innocent, they are brought into a courtroom, and it will be decided by a jury or a judge in some cases, if they are guilty or innocent. So we have to give due process. We have to let the process, unfold here and go through all of the steps.
More for the prosecution when a trial ultimately comes about. There's a lot that can happen between now and then. I think they probably have more evidence that they haven't.
As a single mom and a professional,
busy is an understatement.
What happens on those monetized channels?
Need to reveal in a probable cause affidavit. So there's more that's going to come out, I imagine. Now, the evidence that was presented in the probable cause affidavit, DNA, cell phone, the evidence about the car, the possible eyewitness identification by the surviving roommate. You had indicated, I think to Anjanette Levy, my co-host, on a previous sidebar, that there are holes in that affidavit. What are those holes?
Well, there's a lot of holes. If you start focusing on every single piece individually and try and show the weaknesses, then that's something that a defense attorney is going to do, right? Starting from the cell towers involved, where they're saying that we can show that he's been to the area at least 12 times. Well, that only shows which tower his phone used. It doesn't really specifically show you his location. He's only
And
about.
the thing you have to remind, everybody, and I know that they're talking about this here, but the thing you have to keep in mind is that all of the information that's going to happen in this case is not just in that affidavit that we had. That is a probable cause affidavit, a statement to say what happened, what led up, what circumstance, what information, what facts ties this specific person to this specific crime. That is to be looked over by a judge and get the permission to go and arrest this person, suspect number 1, for possibly, allegedly being the perpetrator in a crime. And this will not get, you're not going to hear everything now. That's not what the probable cause affidavit is. But as much as I've said, and I've looked over this a million times, this is a lot of information. Probably one of the biggest, longest affidavits I've ever read. But we're going to hear more, and there's going to be more things that come out. So keep that in mind.
8 to 10, 15 miles away from the crime scene. And he lives nearby, basically. And his phone could have picked up any one of those towers, unless they've got more. Again, there's other technology.
But let's just push on
And
that.
against, yeah, keep in mind here too, what we're hearing, this is a defense attorney, so she's coming from a defense perspective.
For a second, because they said
Yeah,
that
I actually really like this because it kind of gives you a window of what we may see if Kohberger goes to trial, what some of the points they may argue in this trial. So this is really great stuff.
he was near that area, near that crime scene 12 times before, either late at night or early morning hours, like in the dead of night. Why those times? It's not like they picked him up 12 times in the middle of the afternoon at 3 o'clock. The times of when they picked it up is what's so interesting.
The times are very interesting. But again, one of the questions I would ask as defense counsel or an investigator is there a reason for him to be there? Other than the obvious, right? Does he have a friend there? Is there someone he's visiting in the area? Or again, those hours where he's being picked up, are those is it truly that because he's near the area, or he just happens to be out and his phone happened to use the cell tower? And remember, in the affidavit, they actually say that the cell tower showed that he was in the area, I believe on the 14th, it was one of the days, and that was inaccurate. They actually said it. They said in the affidavit that it was inaccurate. So it's not very reliable.
Let's focus on the cell phone data, because I think it was some of the most, damning for him. So they have cell phone data that indicates that his cell phone leaves his house at 2:47 a.m. on the night of the murders. It stops connecting to the network for whatever reason. A presumption could be that maybe he turned it off. So it's off during the times of the killings, but then comes back onto the network at 4:48 a.m.
Right.
after the killings, after police say the killings happened. And we know the combination of the cell phone data and the car data, the car that's picked up on surveillance video, shows it leaving Moscow and headed back to Pullman at Washington State University. So that's, again, how do you poke holes in that?
Again, obviously it's problematic. And I've always said it. Looking at evidence individually is very important, but we know what the prosecution is going to say, right? They're going to take all of them, put them together and say, here, we're building a circumstantial case. Yes, there may be weaknesses in this evidence. There may be weaknesses in this one, but then when you put them all together, you can see a story and a theme, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Now, one of the things that defense can say is, wait a minute, there's a gap of maybe an hour or 2 hours from what I recall, right, where his phone is off. And you can't really place where he is. You don't know where he is. Well, you can make the argument that he turned it off. Is that enough, though? Where was he truly, based on the cell site information? You've got...
Hey, you want to order some Taco Bell?
Sorry about the commercial.
Zero evidence as far as based on the cell site information, as far as where he is at the time. Yes, I know we're reading more into it. Again, this is the circumstantial part of it. What do we derive from this evidence? Was he planning this? Did he shut his phone? Or maybe he was in an area that was a dead spot. I don't know. There may be an explanation here. And again, it requires more investigation and looking into all of this evidence.
And you could say, well, what was he doing? Well, if his phone was off, they also had what appeared to be his car making initial passes by the crime scene, by this house, multiple passes. And then, the car is seen leaving the area and speeding away, I think at 4:16 a.m. or something around that time. So, if you put the cell phone away, the car, I think, is problematic. Let's talk about what could be arguably the direct evidence. So the DNA evidence. This, for me, reading the probable cause affidavit, is the strongest evidence directly to him, right? So the idea that there was this sheath, that was a knife sheath, was left over at the crime scene next to one of the bodies. They took a DNA material from that sheath. They took a DNA sample from one of his trash, and they were able to create a DNA profile that matched the father of the suspect, right? And, the probability is what, 90? I'll actually pull it up because I think the language.
It's 99.8%. She even knows. She's smiling.
So they say at least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. How do you fight against that evidence, the DNA evidence?
It's again, that's not an easy one, but there's other arguments. Instead of focusing on the science of it, for example, we can focus on how did that.
And she's a defense attorney, so you're hearing this from a defense attorney's perspective. So this is, like I said, this is really good stuff. I want to see how she kind of wiggles her way out of this one.
Does he have any relationship with these people? Was he at the apartment at all? Has he seen them? Has he at some point touched that sheath? Maybe at a store. Again, there's ways of explaining it, and we don't have enough evidence. I don't have enough access to some of the evidence, and I'm sure there's way more than what we've got. Nobody has ever talked about if there was any relationship between him and the individuals, the victims in this crime. So that's something to deal with. The other thing is, and this is connecting him to his dad. It could be, I'm assuming there's ways of finding the DNA on scientifically, and that's a separate part. But again, you narrow it down to, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 10,000 people who could fall into that category of a match to his father, right? It's not just him. There's more people. But again, I think the better argument is, was there a relationship? Did he happen to touch this previously? And that would be the best way to handle it.
And right now they've indicated that there's no established connection between him and the victims. It seems like a complete stranger who, we mentioned the 12 times before the cell phone, was tracking him. Was it possible that he was following them and stalking them? That's the allegation. Before I let you go, we have about a minute left. The possible eyewitness identification from the surviving roommate. She wakes up, she sees a man clad in black mask. Her description seems to match that of Kohberger. She couldn't it wasn't a positive identification, but bushy eyebrows, his build, the way she describes him matches him. How strong of evidence is that? And can you poke holes in possible testimony at a trial?
I don't think it's the strongest evidence. Bushy eyebrows is something very common, just like the vans that they were talking about is very common. That's not really IDing somebody. She's just saying he's dressed in black and his face is covered, his mouth is covered, his nose is covered. So how is she going to ID him? What are they going to do? A lineup with people with masks? I just don't see that as very strong. It's just one more little piece.
The biggest sticking point right now is the DNA on that sheath, on the knife sheath. We have the DNA, and I'm telling you, it's not everything that the prosecution is going to find in this investigation. They may have more DNA right now, and they haven't put out there, and they may not. We don't know, and I don't think we're only gonna know those answers to if and when this goes to trial. And I'm telling you, it's gonna be a long wait. This is gonna be a very delayed trial. We may not even see anything until next year before we actually see him inside a courtroom, facing a trial. It's even if he decides to go to trial, maybe they do a plea deal, but it's going to be a long case. And I think it's going to be a very long case. If there's not more solid DNA that just really links him into this, like I said, this could be a long case.
Prosecution can use in their circumstantial evidence case. That's all it is. But of course, you can see the defense having a field day with that one.
Yeah, look, I mean, the idea of was she in a traumatic state? What does she exactly remember? How dark was it in the house? And the only thing I'll say to support her claims, her description of the suspect was before Kohberger was even on their radar. So it's not like she went into a room and said, "Oh, yeah, that's what I remember." Her description, she gave a description, and then it was only later on that they came up with a suspect, and it so happened that who they saw matched up to that initial description. Laurie Retzian, thank you for coming on. I'd love to get you back on, talk a little bit more about this case as it progresses.
So that's it. What do you guys think? Do you think Kohberger acted alone? Do you think there could have been another person? Was there another person? Is there someone that we don't know about? Are police still actively investigating another person that is connected to these crimes? It only remains to be seen here over the next couple of weeks, days, weeks, months, hopefully not years. And hopefully we get some resolution to what's going on and we see this play out in trial. And as we all know, the way that we're leaning, that it looks pretty bad for Kohberger at this point. I am leaning into the guilty department for this gentleman. But again, everybody's entitled to a right of a fair trial inside a courtroom, to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So it only remains to be seen. And I'll keep keep up with this, of course. I appreciate, again, everybody that has subscribed over the last couple of days. We're 88 people, subscribers, closer to 1,000. So we're getting there. And I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody interacting with the videos, coming over, spending time and watching. And again, I'll keep making videos for you guys. We'll do these live sessions, keep going through this. And I will be back soon. And that's going to end the show for this evening. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a great night, everybody. See ya.